Sup you beautiful people. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome back to another new episode of What If Deku joined the League of Villains. If you guys enjoyed this what if, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel after watching this video. Before we get into it though, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. Izuku was having a normal day. He had just been doing quirk analysis, and had headed back to the bar for a break and a nice drink. Kurogiri always had his favorite soft drink. However, when he arrived, he was greeted by the sight of Kurogiri using his quirk to stop Tomoura and two others, a man in black with dark hair, and a teenage high school blonde girl, trying to kill each other. A man dressed in purple was there smoking also. He seemed to be enjoying the scene before him. No one seemed to have noticed his presence yet. Kurogiri moved to speak with Tomoura while still holding everyone in place. Please calm yourself, Tomoura Shigaraki. If your desire is to be realized, then we must increase our numbers. Now that we are in the limelight, this is the perfect opportunity. Don't reject them straight off, you should use them, and what there is of Stain's ideology, the Dark Mist villain explained. Shut up. Tomoura snapped as he started moving towards the exit. I'm going out. He barged past Izuku while shooting him a murderous glare. As soon as he was gone, Izuku turned to Kurogiri. Okay, what the hell is going on? He asked frustrated. Hey, Kurogiri, is this that boy I've been hearing about recently, the one called Deku? The guy in purple asked. Izuku didn't know how this man knew about him. Either he was a member of the League or some shady information broker. The other two had different reactions. Deku, repeated the man in black. As in the one who fought alongside Stain and Hosu. Oh, what's Mr. Stainy like? What's his blood type? Was he bleeding while fighting? Wait, what's your blood like? Can I taste it? The girl asked with a crazed expression while also holding out a knife. Izuku took a fighting stance in case she attacked him. He only just met her and could already tell she was a psychopath. Being in the league taught him to recognize certain individuals. You can relax, Deku. They won't harm you, Kurogiri informed him. They're actually here as potential recruits. And so Kurogiri explained the entire situation and who they were. The guy in purple was called Jiren, a broker in the underworld who associated with League. The man in black was called Dabi, and the blonde was called Himiko Toga. Both were here because they heard that Stain was affiliated with the League and was inspired by his ideology when they saw a video uploaded about him, in which it detailed his past and ideals. Izuku briefly wondered how a video like that got out since Stain wasn't the type for publicity. However, he was more concerned with why they were here. Stain wasn't exactly affiliated with them, mainly just him and Razor. The media must have come to that conclusion based on the attack in Hosu where Stain and the Nomu were present at the same time. However, Kurogiri was motioning him to say nothing. You let kids join this organization, the one called Dabi said, surprised. Are you that desperate? We took him in when he was on the verge of death, Kurogiri explained. Since then, he has proven to be a valued member of the League in providing both tactical and scientific support. Well, whatever the case, I intend to be the one to carry out the hero killer's will. However, I don't want to do it while being led by a guy like that, Dabi explained. I'm guessing he means Shigaraki, Izuku thought. Seriously, that guy makes me want to vomit, Dabi continued. He's just upset, that's all, Kurogiri went on. Twice in the past, he has been humbled, once by All Might, the other by Stain. That's why he left, to sort out his issues. Until he does though, would you like to talk about recruitment at a later date? Izuku had been listening but kept quiet till now. Why don't you all wait here? I'll talk to Shigaraki myself, he offered. Everyone turned to face him. Are you sure about this, Deku? He doesn't like you very much, Kurogiri stated. While Tomoura usually acted polite towards Izuku, but that was only because Sensei ordered him to be. Truthfully, he hated the boy, no longer because he was quirkless, but because it seemed as though Sensei favored him more than himself. Izuku was aware of this, yet he never commented on the subject. Kurogiri couldn't understand why he would want to do this. I know, but still, I'd like to talk with him, he said with a look of determination. Kurogiri chose not to argue. This may have been necessary for Tomoura's growth, and by extension, Izuku's. Kiashi Ward shopping mall. It took him a while, but he finally tracked down Tomoura. He received information on where he usually goes from, shockingly, Sensei. Kurogiri must have informed him of the situation, but that didn't matter right now, finding Tomoura did. Izuku had not been lying when he said he wanted to talk to him, however, he had his own reasons. Mostly, he was curious about the man and his past. Izuku knew Tomoura was Sensei's protege. The man once bragged about it, and later Kurogiri confirmed it, yet they never said why. How did someone like Tomoura, a spoiled childish brat, become protege to someone like All for One? How did he even join the League at all? Izuku wanted to know. His thoughts were interrupted by a girl bumping into him. Oh sorry. I wasn't watching where I was going, the girl said, bowing her head. It's no problem, Izuku replied with no malice. I wasn't watching where I was going either. As soon as he got a good look at her, he recognized her. It was the girl he had saved from the USJ incident. Ichako Araka, he murmured. The latter stared at him surprised. As soon as he realized what he had done, he quickly moved to correct himself. I recognize you from the sports festival, he said while grinning. You put up an amazing fight against that explosion boy, Bakugo was it? Her surprised expression didn't go away, however. Wow, I can't believe people still remember that, she replied. A few minutes ago, these guys recognized me and my class saying we were awesome at the festival. That last part Izuku's attention. Class 1A was here. He kept calm however and continued talking. Class 1A is here. He asked sounding like an intrigued fan. Yeah. Most of us are doing some shopping for a school field trip, she explained. I was just going to buy some bug spray. Should Izuku mentally curse? Does that mean Bakugo is here also? While he was certain he could handle him, it raised the risk of exposing his identity and compromising the league. He quickly calmed himself down. He needed to be sure if he was here or not. Hold on, most of you. Is there anyone who didn't come with you? He asked. This was a risky question likely to raise suspicion. Luckily, Uraraka didn't seem to notice. Just Bakugo and Todoroki. They're the most social in our class, Bakugo especially, but otherwise they're alright, she replied. Izuku breathed with relief. He was safe for the moment. He then remembered why he was there. I have to go now, I'm meeting a friend, so please excuse me, he said politely. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to keep you up, Uraraka said apologetically. Before you go, can I ask you something? Have we met before? It's just that, there's something familiar about you. She wasn't lying. There was something about his eyes that was just familiar, but she couldn't think of what it was. No, I don't think we have, Izuku lied. I think I would remember meeting someone as beautiful as you. As soon as the words left his mouth he froze. Uraraka started blushing. Oh well, I really need to get going, so bye, Izuku told her in a frantic manner as he started running towards another location. Uraraka still stood there blushing. She then wondered why she hadn't bothered asking for his name. He seemed so nice. Izuku was currently having similar thoughts. Why did I say something like that? He wondered, frustrated. He didn't spend much time pondering about it however, because at that moment he saw a familiar hooded figure. He reached for him only to earn a cold glare from the man. What the hell are you doing here? Tomiura angrily demanded. In fact, how the fuck did you even find me? Doesn't matter, Izuku said firmly. We need to talk, like now. Tomiura grunted in annoyance. Oh really, and just why should I do that? He asked arrogantly. Look, I get you don't like me, and you've been screwed over twice, Izuku told him. There are some things I'd like to clear up between us. So could you just please lend me 5 fucking minutes of your time? Tomiura flinched. He'd never heard Deku swear before, so he must have actually been serious. Tomiura would have liked nothing more than to disintegrate his face at that moment, but then an idea came to his mind. Deku was with Stain, he thought. So maybe he can tell me why people are more focused on him than me. Okay fine, let's talk. But not here, someone might overhear us, he said while walking towards an alley as Deku trailed behind. When they were alone, Tomiura started talking again. Alright you little brat, he snarled. Me and Stain, what's the difference? The question caught Izuku off guard. What's gotten into him? He thought. He genuinely couldn't understand Tomiura's actions. The difference between him and Stain, why did he want to know? Why do you want to know? I thought you hated him, he responded. Tomiura glared at Izuku. Of course, I hate him. I despise everything about him, he growled. However, he seems to have outshined me in that everyone is now more focused on him, and have forgotten about the attack on the USJ, and the Nomu I released in Hosu. Why is it, I wonder? In the end all he really does is destroy the things that he hates like me. Yet he's got sympathizers and people willing to support and look up to him, and they couldn't even give a shit about his ideals. I can't understand it, and it really pisses me off. Izuku was beginning to see a different side of Tomiura. He was willing to change so he could improve, in essence, he was growing. So Midoriya, what do you think the difference between us is? Tomiura asked again. Okay, I'll tell you, but I want something in return, Izuku replied, causing Tomiura to growl. I want you to tell me about how you joined the league, about how you became Sensei's protege. If Tomiura wanted him to give an answer, then he should give one in return. God Razor was really rubbing off on him. That whole if you want answers then earn a thing she pulled on him before was now coming into play. Tomiura on the other hand was stunned at what Deku had just demanded from him. Why the hell should he tell him about his life prior to the league? Then again, this was his only chance to understand why people noticed Stain more than him. Suddenly an idea formed in his mind. If this kid wanted his life story so badly then fine, but with a couple of conditions. Okay, I'll tell you, but only if I find your answer to my question good enough, Tomiura declared. Fine then, Izuku accepted. I will. He spent a minute thinking about his answer before speaking again. Well, I don't get it all. I don't understand your goals and ideals, Izuku said carefully. Stain is a different matter. He doesn't just destroy things that annoy him, he has genuine reasons for doing what he does, unlike you. During my week with him, I learned that he and I had a lot in common, one of which was the defining factor in what we became, All Might, who inspired us both. Also, despite what he encounters, Stain never wavers in his beliefs unlike you. That is the difference between you two, that's my answer. Izuku hadn't noticed it before, but Tomiura was actually smiling now, and it looked very disturbing. That feels like a weight off my chest, he exhaled. I see it now. Why I hate him so much and why you irritated me. Everything makes sense, it's All Might, he's the problem. It was in front of me the whole time and yet I couldn't see it. He's the reason these morons are smiling like they haven't got a single care in the world. They feel so safe because their so-called symbol of peace is smiling like there's no one in the world he couldn't save. He then faced Deku. Thanks. I'm glad we had this chat. I feel better, Deku, since I don't have to change my ways at all. Because now I know what I must do, he told the boy. You know, it's ironic, hero killer. In many ways, I'm your opposite, but you let me live. And now your convictions and ideals will become a stepping stone for me, he internally monologued. I had those things myself, I just never realized it. Create a world without All Might. And show them all how fragile their justice system truly is. That's my conviction, my ideal. From this day forwards, it's all about destroying All Might. He started to walk away but called out to Izuku at the last second. I find your answer acceptable, Deku. However, I need to do something first, so I'll tell you about my backstory later. See ya. When he was gone, Izuku just stood there. I swear this is Razor all over again, he thought. Izuku hadn't seen her in a while because she was still away on business. He did what she asked and yet she still had not talked to him. Admittedly, he found it frustrating. He nearly died fighting Katsuki. The least she could do was uphold her end of the bargain. Razor aside, he really didn't know much about the others from the league. Even with Kurogiri, who was the nicest member by far, he didn't know much about or how he had even joined the league. To be fair, their relationship was more of a professional one, they weren't friends. I wouldn't know what that's like though, would I, since I've never really had friends, he lamented. Sure, he was Bakugo when we were children, but then he got his quirk and I never got one. And that's when my life went to hell. Since then, I haven't had friends. It was sad, but it was the truth. His mother had made it all bearable though. She loved him unconditionally and tried to be there for him through all his struggles. In all honesty, she was the one thing about his former life that he missed, the only thing. Whenever he saw her out on the streets looking for him, he always resisted the urge to run over and go back to her. He missed her so much, and he hated hurting her like this. His thoughts were interrupted by someone groaning. Izuku turned to see 3 students kicking another student to the ground. They were ganging up on him using their quirks. The ringleader summoned fire to his hand. He was going to burn the other student. Izuku started walking away since it wasn't his problem. There was also no need to attract attention in this place. That's right, you quirkless reject, just stay down and it won't hurt as badly, the leader threatened. Izuku stopped dead. The other boys were snickering and jeering, God, he's so pathetic. So useless he can't even defend himself, though I guess that's to be expected from a quirkless person. Izuku didn't say anything, but in that instant, a variety of thoughts were flowing through his mind. Memories of the abuse he had endured for being quirkless flowed through him like a river. He remembered how helpless and weak he had been, the injustice of it all, and the scars he bore, not all of which were caused by Bakugo. When he remembered all this, he pulled up his hood and his scarf to cover his face. He then turned to the bullies and charged at them. They never saw him coming. He went for the leader first. He delivered a powerful punch straight to the jaw that sent him crashing to the ground. The bullies were caught off guard by the sudden new arrival. Before they could react, Izuku turned and performed a back-rising kick into one of the students. The kick connected with his stomach and sent him up into the air, slightly vomiting, where it landed on his back. He was clutching his stomach in pain afterwards. This time the third student did react, and so he manifested some spikes from his body and shot them at Izuku. Izuku easily dodged the projectiles by flipping forward over them. While doing so, he spun quick and close enough to the student to land a solid axe kick on his face, thus sending him crashing to the ground. The kick split a part of his lip, causing blood to ooze out. However, the rest of his face was left unscarred by the impact. Wow. I'm a lot stronger than I thought. That's staying at Razor's training for you, he thought. Ruthless but effective. Hey, you. What the hell do you think you're doing? Yelled the leader who had gotten back up. Stopping you guys from beating up this kid, Izuku stated honestly. What did he ever do to you to deserve this? That quirkless runt wants to become a hero, which is complete bullshit, the leader barked furiously. Someone like him has no right to be a hero. That's something only people like me deserve. He even wanted to go to UA, which is dumb. There's no way a prestigious school like that would ever let in a weak, pathetic loser like him. It would be a disgrace to their reputation. Izuku was pissed as hell. This guy was a lot like Bakugo. Arrogant, cruel, abusive, prejudiced, a complete and utter bully. In short, he was the sort of person who Izuku hated, the sort who had driven him to become a villain. He can't be a hero because he's quirkless, you say. Well, that's funny because I happen to be quirkless and look at what I just did, he said, catching the boy's attention. A hero can be anybody, even someone quirkless, but not you know. A scumbag like you could never be one. Wanna know why? It's because you're a coward who only preys on the weak to boost your own ego. If you came face to face with someone stronger, you would run away because that's the kind of person you are. The leader's face contorted with anger. He activated his quirk and prepared to attack, but Izuku was too quick for him. He grabbed the leader's arm, twisted it, and brought his knee up sharply to it. It snapped like a twig. The leader howled in pain as he clutched his now broken arm. His two sidekicks had recovered and moved to aid him. The three of them glanced at Izuku fearfully and started running with hopes of reaching a hospital. Izuku didn't even bother to pursue them because he had made his point perfectly clear. "Why did you help me?" asked the victim, who was staring at Izuku in awe. "Because I understand how you feel," he replied simply. "I too was bullied for being quirkless. For so long I allowed it to happen, and most of the time it felt like I was dying. It was only when I learned how to defend myself that I took a stand." The victim said nothing. He was still staring at Izuku in amazement. "Let me give you some advice that someone gave me a long time ago," he said, now looking at the victim. "Go to someone for help, or at least try to defend yourself. Otherwise, they will always torment you as they tormented me." The victim just stood there completely stunned. Having achieved his objective, Izuku departed towards the hideout. Izuku arrived back at the bar only to see Dabi and Toga exiting. Dabi wore the same emotionless expression, but Toga was jumping up and down with excitement. They nearly bumped into Izuku. "Well, we've officially joined," Dabi announced. "That Shigaraki is surprising. A world without All Might, huh? At least he's got some sort of creed." "I'm looking forward to working with you," Toga said enthusiastically. "I hope I can try some of your blood sometimes also." "Okay." Toga was starting to scare him. Dabi looked annoyed by this. "I know, she's crazy. But I'm sure you'll get used to her eventually," he assured Izuku. "And so will I probably." Toga just giggled at this. So far Izuku was liking Dabi, so far. Nothing more was spoken between them. The duo then moved off down the alley until they disappeared from his view. Izuku walked into the bar and was surprised at what he saw. Razor was there drinking some wine while Tomura lounged around on the couch, and Kurogiri managed the bar. Feeling he had been patient long enough, Izuku spoke up. "Okay people, time for answers," he announced, attracting everyone's attention. "Razor and Tomura, you both owe me answers as part of our deals. You both owe me the truth about your pasts." "Kurogiri, I made no such deal with you, but I would still like to know about why and how you joined the league, if that's okay." Everyone just stared at Izuku. Tomura looked irritated. Razor looked amused. Kurogiri looked surprised and slightly uncomfortable. "Demanding something from me. You've finally grown a pair of balls, Izuku. I'm so proud of you," Razor told him. "They were always there. I just didn't know it," he replied. Razor started laughing. Izuku had transformed into a different person from the one she met a year ago. He had even learned how to make proper comebacks. "Alright, I suppose you've earned them. Tomura, you fucking bastard, you'd better own up also," she said. "I will." "You don't have to tell me, bitch," he snarled. "Kurogiri, do you want to tell Izuku?" Razor asked. The Black Mist villain's only response was silence as he stared down into the counter. Immediately, Izuku realized that this must be a painful subject for him. Kurogiri," Izuku started. "You really don't have to do this if you don't want to. I was just curious, that's all." "No, it's alright. I want to tell you. You'll probably find out someday anyway," he admitted. "I'd like to go last though, if that's alright." Izuku nodded. "Okay then, ladies first," Izuku said while looking at Razor. "There's a lady in the room," Tomura joked. "Really, where?" Razor glared at Tomura. "You know, Izuku, you're right, it should be ladies first," she said. "So go on, Tomura, you're up first it seems." This time it was Tomura who glared. Izuku and Kurogiri were both wondering if they would be able to get through this without insulting each other. Though in all fairness, a verbal battle between them would be preferable to a physical one. "Razor, please go first," Izuku politely requested. Still glaring at Tomura, Razor relented and turned to Izuku. It was then that she started telling him about her past. Flashback. Her name was Razor, at least that's what she had been told. She did not have a real name since she did not have parents. She was abandoned by them, or so she had been told. Either way, it didn't matter. Not where she was. It was a place that would have been known as hell at the start, but over time it became her home. Razor was the name given to her when she was 4 when she manifested her quirk. That was how it worked for all the children adopted by the organization. It was called Butler. Where they even came up with such a stupid name, she did not know or care. However, it was kind of appropriate. Hired servants doing their employer's bidding, that's what they were. Butler was a mercenary organization that took on any job, be it an assassination, protection of someone or something, acquiring information, you name it. Whatever it was, they would always take it on, well, not always, depending on whether the available people would accept it or not. They took jobs from anyone, hero, villain, or some other individual. It didn't really matter as long as they were paid. Most who were accredited were orphans, those who had been abandoned and forsaken, or those who were runaways. She happened to fit into the abandoned category. Each child was usually given a name based on their quirk. When taken in, they were cared for, educated, and trained, in the same hellish manner she taught Izuku, though with less swearing. They were also taught to mainly rely on themselves, something she excelled most in. That wasn't to say you couldn't be friends with anyone because it was allowed. Though she preferred to be on her own most of the time, even back then there were few who she could actually stand. Even she had managed to make 2 friends whom she genuinely liked and respected. They didn't keep in contact most of the time though. An odd thing about Butler was that it allowed people to willingly leave it and live a normal life. It was even allowed that you be able to live a normal life while still working for the organization, something which she found stupid since it was quite dangerous. Razor had never understood why it was allowed, but she never questioned it either. One friend of hers lived the first life while the other lived the second. She had always lived the usual though, it had been the only she had ever known, also she didn't really fit in with society because of her personality. She took on all sorts of jobs which were mainly centered around combat, something she really enjoyed. Along with her missions, she encountered many individuals, including Stain and All Might, whom she came to befriend or despise. She had spilled blood, saved lives, tortured, and defended all because she was ordered to. The only thing she had not done was take the life of a child. She acknowledged she was a bitch, but not that big of one. That was one line even she would never cross, one of her few morals. There was no time limit for how long she worked for her clients. Whenever they declared the mission was completed, she would return to Butler. Other times were when the employer was arrested or killed. That was her story. This was her life. It was all she had. Flashback end. No one said anything. Izuku however was especially surprised. Razor is a mercenary, he realized. Thinking back to the day before he fought Bakugo, he remembered what she had said to Sensei. The organization, your plans, not mine. Do I need to remind you of my place here? It made sense now. Razor was not actually part of the league. She was just a hired gun. That meant she wouldn't always be here, something which upset him. Despite her personality, he genuinely liked her. Razor had completely changed him. When he was a weak, scared kid, she helped him get back up and made him stronger. When the time for her to leave would come, he was going to miss her. Having known her story beforehand, Kurogiri refrained from commenting. Tomoura didn't comment either. However, like Izuku, he was surprised. He never would have expected Razor to live that sort of life, although he didn't think it was pleasant either. With skills and personality like hers, it was bound to be rough. Still, he wouldn't miss her when Sensei was finished with her services, quite the contrary. Razor did not know why, but she felt happy that she had told Izuku her story. Though she hadn't told him everything, just a general idea. She didn't want to speak about her friends while they were being watched. She did not want to risk one of them, or their family becoming targets. Okay, Shigaraki, it's your turn, Izuku informed him. Tomoura turned to face Izuku. He then began talking about his past. Flashback. Long before he was Tomoura Shigaraki, before he was Sensei's protege, he was someone else. He was Tenko Shimura. Or at least that's what he'd been told. In truth, he didn't remember much about his life before the league. He had flashes, none of which were pleasant, but that was it. He remembered walking through the streets alone, injured, bleeding, broken. He walked by people who took brief notice of him before turning away and moving on. They could tell he had been in trouble, that he had been hurt, and what did they do? Nothing. Nothing at all. They walked on like nothing had happened. They didn't help him. Whatever his problem was, whatever danger he had been in, they didn't care. Why should they? They believed a hero would come and save him as they did with everyone else. They were wrong. A hero never came to help him. No one did. Except for him. Tired and exhausted from walking around aimlessly for so long, Tenko collapsed in an abandoned alley. Why do I continue walking? Tenko said tiredly to no one in particular. What's the point? Where am I even moving towards? He did not know why he walked. He could not remember. He was an empty shell of whatever he once was. He did not feel any desire nor care, only emptiness. Perhaps it's because you have a reason to continue pressing forward, came a voice from the shadows. Tenko looked up and saw a figure walking towards him. It was a man. Tall, young, well-built, with short blonde hair, light-colored eyes, accompanied by a tuxedo. The man was smiling. His smile wasn't cruel, but it wasn't kind either. Who are you? Tenko asked without thinking. A friend, the man answered. At least I'd like to be. Tenko wasn't sure what to make of him. He didn't seem like a good person, but he was the first person in a long time who didn't turn away and ignore him. I've been watching you for some time now, the man informed him. Tenko wasn't sure how to react. Surprise, anger, he didn't know. He was empty. It is an unfortunate fate that has befallen you, Tenko Shimura. Tenko Shimura, he softly repeated. Is that my name? The man stared back at him, this time wearing an expression of surprise. Did the boy really not remember? I'm sorry, Tenko apologized. I don't remember much about my life, even my own name. I should be bothered, but instead, I feel nothing. Why is that? Why do I feel empty inside? And why did I end up like this? Tenko stared at his hands, for some unknown reason feeling revulsion. He could not remember, but he knew it was important. I've walked for so long, he admitted. And those people. The man started moving towards him again. He hadn't been lying about watching the boy. He'd seen what he'd done, why he did it, and how and why people treated him the way they did. Nobody came to save you, did they? The man asked, catching Tenko's attention. It must have been so painful, Tenko Shimura. It was. It must have been so scary. It was. It must have been so lonely. It was. That's why you ran searching for a helping hand, the man continued as he stretched his own hand out towards the boy. It must have been so horrible. Tenko stared at him, unable to comprehend. Was he actually offering to? Surely a hero will just leave it to the heroes to. Everyone used excuses like that to ignore you, didn't they? They did. They all did. Tenko didn't understand why, but the man's words resonated with him, and he began crying. The man was close enough now, and seeing the tears in Tenko's eyes, he pulled the youth into an embrace. Who in the world could do something like this to you? Who? He didn't know, but it felt like he should. It's fine now. You have me now. That embrace, that comfort he hadn't realized he'd been desperately craving. Of all the things in his memory, that hug, Sensei's embrace, that was what he remembered most. Why? Because it made him feel something that he hadn't in a very long time. Hope. Sometime later. After that, All For One took him in. One could even say he adopted him, which wasn't entirely inaccurate. All For One gave him a room of his own, and told Tenko he would be his sensei, though the boy was curious as to what he would be taught. Dr. All For One called. Tenko hadn't noticed him before, but there was another man in the room. He was a short-statured man who was bald and possessed a large mustache. In addition, he wore goggles. That wasn't what caught his attention. What caught his attention was what was on the table in front of the doctor. It was a series of mutilated hands. These are your family members' remains, the doctor informed him. What? Tenko thought disbelievingly. Surely, he heard him wrong. The remains of his family. That meant they were dead. He suddenly developed a previously unheard of quirk, the doctor continued before dropping the bombshell. And killed your family with those hands of yours. Tenko felt a sharp pain in his head. A large wave of nausea began to come over him, and he felt the urge to throw up. He had a flash of a dog, then some ashy remains. The more he thought about it, the more his head hurt, and he started pulling on his face. Vomit started coming up in his throat. Do you remember? There was a flash of decayed bodies. A flash of a girl with black hair and pigtails. And a flash of a man with a horrified expression that sent chills down his spine. In the end, he couldn't hold it in anymore and vomited. What remained in his mind were fragments of his past, and an unexplained surge of anger that overwhelmed his urge to vomit. He didn't really understand it. He wasn't even sure he wanted to understand it. Yet at that moment he felt the incredible urge to be near those hands, as he started crawling towards them with a broken, mortified expression on his face. When he reached them, he clutched them for dear life, all while Sensei and the doctor just watched. Shall I fix him? The doctor offered. No, All For One declined, his attention never wavering from Tenko. Even if your memories never return, your feelings will remain embedded in your heart. I can't take away your feelings, your anger. But I can teach you where to direct those feelings. He didn't understand why, but he believed him. Tenko believed this man. He believed he could help him, save him when no one else could. After this incident, he began his long road as All For One's successor. Shedding the name Tenko Shimura and becoming Tomura Shigaraki. Flashback end. Tomura just stared at the ground. He hadn't told anyone about this in so long. Everyone had gone silent, with each having different thoughts on the matter. Razor, despite how much she hated this brat, actually felt sorry for him. Kurogiri, who had heard this story before, looked away sadly. Izuku was beyond shocked. He never would have imagined Tomura had gone through something like that. To be left broken like he was, only for Sensei to come in and save him at the last minute. There was more than that though. The fact that those people, those civilians, just left him to fend for himself while assuming a hero would come and save him, made Izuku realize for the first time how fragile society truly was. They had to be if they depended on heroes to that degree. Still, he sympathized with Tomura in more ways than one. People think quirks are so great. But they aren't. That's why I hated you starting off. I wish I was still quirkless. It would have been better than what I have, Tomura exclaimed. I'm surprised Sensei didn't even offer you one. Oh, he did. However, I said no. Wanting a quirk was me wanting to be accepted by society, which will never happen, Izuku replied. Still though, he was surprised as to why Tomura had hated him. He'd never heard of someone wishing to be quirkless before. It appeared Tomura believed the world of quirks was a very dangerous place. Sensei doesn't favor me, you know, Izuku stated. He likes the work I do, but that's it. Other than that, there's nothing else, so you don't need to feel threatened by my presence. Tomura glanced at him with an unreadable expression. He then sighed. Whatever, he said. Anyway, it's Kurogiri's turn. All eyes were now on Kurogiri, who was somewhat nervous. Aside from Razor and All For One, no one knew about his past or about lore. Taking a deep breath, he began to speak. My rise to villainy is somewhat similar to Izuku's. The only difference is that it involves a quirkless person in my life who went through what he did. Her name was Laura, my younger sister. Flashback. Kuroshisa used to be his name. He lived with his sister Laura, who was 4 years younger than him. Their parents passed away when he was 15, leaving him to raise his sister all on his own. It wasn't entirely difficult. The money their parents left them enabled them to both go to school. His part-time job paid remarkably well also, so they could afford to pay rent. Back then his body wasn't completely covered by black mist. That was optional for him. He could turn his body into dark mist at will. It was because of this that his sister gave him the nickname Kurogiri, which was the kanji for black mist. Like his sister, he had red hair and green eyes. He was also tall and muscular, a perk of doing his job. Laura was such a sweet girl. She was always good to others and always looked out for the well-being of others rather than her own. She had this dream of being a singer too. She didn't even care that she was quirkless. Kuro loved her deeply. When he was with her, he felt like his life had a purpose, a reason to live. Things were happy between them, or so he thought. When Laura was in high school, she changed. He didn't notice it at first, but after a while, he could tell something was wrong. She wasn't socializing as much as she used to. Most days when she came home, she would head over to her room and stay there until dinner. Usually when they talked it was about school and work. When the topic of her friends came up, Laura always said that they were busy with study like she was. She was always smiling during these conversations, so he never questioned her. He should have. As the years went on, Kuro noticed certain changes in his sister, most notably physical ones. When she came back from school, some days Kuro could see faint outlines of bruises on her wrists, and occasionally from her neck. She covered them both up, but he still noticed them. Whenever questioned about it, Laura would make up some excuse about how she fell or hit into something when she wasn't looking. Though he knew otherwise. He concluded that she was being bullied at school and confronted her about it. Laura denied it, but she was a poor liar, so he saw right through her. When she realized this, she pleaded that nothing was wrong, and everything that happened to her was just an accident. Not wanting to upset her, he did nothing. It was the biggest mistake of his life, one that would forever haunt him. Then came a day when she returned home more exhausted than usual. Her eyes, they had the look of a dead person. That did it. Kuro couldn't take this anymore, so he was going to go to her school tomorrow and speak with the principal and teachers about this. Laura suddenly announced she was going out for a walk, despite that it was late. She told him she had her keys so she would let herself back in, he could go to bed. She then said something that he would never forget even if he tried. She hugged him tightly and said, "Thanks for everything, Kuro. Thanks for being my big brother. Thanks for always being there for me. I really love you for it." He was slightly taken back by this. However, he returned the hug and told her he loved her also. It was then she went for a walk. That was the last moment they shared with each other. The following day when he noticed she wasn't at home, he figured she must be at school. Of course, when he arrived at the school, he discovered that she hadn't been there all morning. It was then he remembered what she said to him last night, the way she said it, and the state she had been in. Fearing the worst, he called the police only to discover they were about to call him. Approximately an hour before he called, Laura's body had been found in a local river. She had drowned. The moment Kuro heard that, he froze. He couldn't breathe. The nausea he felt at that exact moment was overwhelming, so much that he collapsed. When he woke up, he was in the hospital. There were 2 police officers outside talking. Apparently, he had been asleep for a total day. What's more, they were talking about Laura. Have the skull been questioned yet? Yes, but no one is saying anything, or rather they're denying it. Despite what Miss Shisa's diary says, no one is confirming anything. They stopped talking when a man came up to the room and entered. He wore a black coat and hat. He possessed blonde hair, chocolate brown eyes, and was quite tall. "Hello, Mr. Shisa. My name is Ryo Yugami, Detective Yugami," the man informed him. "I know this is sudden, but I'm here to ask you a couple of questions about your sister's passing." Passing? What a polite way of putting it. "You mean her suicide?" Kuro retorted. "You don't have to sugarcoat it. I realized when I heard the way she acted last night was enough proof." The detective frowned. "And just what do you think made her fall to that point?" he asked. And so, he explained to the detective about Laura's behavior and her injuries. When he finished, the detective was silent. Kuro knew from the way he was acting that he knew something he didn't, and so he demanded answers. Detective Yugami, feeling the man had a right to know what happened to his sister, decided to tell him. Laura had been bullied at school. The primary reason, she was quirkless. It wasn't a major issue at first, but after a while, it got worse. From what the police got from her diary, they had to search the apartment for evidence. She was mainly tormented by a girl called Nenriki. In her own words, the girl used her telekinesis to trip her up, steal from her, shove her around, and abuse her in a variety of other ways. She also called her a variety of names such as quirkless bitch, and some far worse ones. It wasn't long before others joined in, and things got worse. Their friends stopped talking to her as well. Apparently, Nen, his father was a lawyer, had threatened them to stay away from her, or else their parents would lose their jobs. Nen always made fun of Laura's dreams, saying she would never be anything more than what she already was. The girl even bragged about how she was going to be a hero, admired by everyone, more famous and rich than any other. To put it simply, she was a self-absorbed bitch. The only reason she hadn't been arrested was because her father defended her, and no one was willing to speak against her, mostly out of fear. The detective didn't tell him everything, but he told him enough. There were certain details that he left out for specific reasons. Kuro shook with rage. He was angry at the skull and Laura's friends for what they had done to her. He was angry at that girl for making her life hellish for no real reason, other than the fact that she was quirkless. But most of all, he was angry at himself for doing nothing. If he had looked into the matter, if he had been a proper big brother, then she would still be alive. He thanked the detective for his information, and said it made him feel more understanding of why his sister died. When the detective exited the room, he began to sob hysterically. He apologized to Laura for failing as her big brother and not protecting her when he should have. It was at that moment he made a silent dark promise to himself to get revenge. This was achieved a couple of weeks later. It wasn't hard for Kuro to get details about the girl. He had gone to one of Laura's friends who, out of guilt for not helping Laura, gave him information about Nan and a picture of what she looked like. Then using his quirk, people at the time thought it was transporting something as far as his miss could go at the time. He stalked her to learn everything about her daily routine. Eventually, he decided that he'd waited long enough. When she was alone, he struck. First, he sliced off her hands with a large knife to render her quirk useless. She was caught totally surprised by the assault. She started screaming in agony and then for help. She tried to run, but Kuro wouldn't let her. He used his quirk to get in front of her and stab her repeatedly. As she coughed up blood, she pleaded for mercy. He coldly refused and informed her why she was about to die, much to her surprise. He then icily told her that no threat she used, or even her quirk would save her. She was going to die, and nothing could change that, much to her horror. Furious at what was happening, Nan began gloating at how she tormented Laura. She referred to her as a quirkless whore, and admitted to advising her on drowning herself. Enraged, Kurogiri stabbed her in the neck to silence her. Watching her die satisfied him in ways he couldn't describe. After this, he went into hiding, or rather he disappeared from the world. He didn't want to be part of a society that didn't have lore. Sometime later, he met Sensei and joined the league. His villain's name became the cute nickname his sister gave him. While to others, it was just a name that matched his quirk, but to him, it had a deep meaning. Flashback end. Everyone, barring Razor, was shocked. Tomura remembered how Kurogiri reacted to quirkless people before. Now it made sense. He felt an odd amount of sympathy for the man. Izuku felt a deep sadness and sympathy for Kurogiri. He was also disturbed at how similar Laura's situation had been to his. If I had actually died, my mom, would she have, to Bakugo? He thought horrified. No, she wouldn't, she would never. Izuku didn't want to think that his mother was capable of such action. He wouldn't have been alive to know it, but he couldn't bear the thought. He had been so selfish, he never even considered what might happen if he had committed suicide. Well, that's all of us. Are you satisfied, Izuku? Razor asked. Izuku nodded in response, feeling somewhat closer to them now that he knew their stories. Tomura and Razor started to leave, but he called out to them. Thanks for telling me. I'm quite grateful. You too, Kurogiri, he informed them. They all turned to look at him. We aren't good, Izuku, but we aren't totally evil either, Razor told him. We all have something that defines us for who we are, much like heroes, Tomura added. It was Kurogiri's message that affected him the most. There's something you should know, Izuku. Good and evil, they aren't born, they are made, he explained. It was then that they all took off. Izuku returned to his apartment overwhelmed from the day he had just had. He collapsed on his bed and fell into a deep sleep. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe and comment down below, and turn on the bell notification. And also check out other videos that I have created and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.